This is the Zelos Podcast with Rocky Snyder, the show that's all about the pros behind the pros. Welcome to this episode of the Zelos Podcast. I'm Rocky Snyder. With me in his studio, at least in a nice outdoor studio, is Dr. Brandon Marcello. And he is also one of the Perform Better presenters, but so much more. He's got a lot of work being done with the military, as well as has some experience in Olympic teams and professional sports teams, and currently residing in Sarasota, Florida, but he was a fellow Californian until he jumped ship. So welcome to the show, Brandon.
Thanks. Glad to be here. I feel connected to California again. This is great.
Yeah, I got to make that West Coast connection, the left coast. But now you're over in Florida now. And first of all, what is that like? So for someone in the fitness industry, conditioning industry, and you've just taken your business and you haven't moved next door to the next town or anything. You moved on the other side of the continent. What was that like? What was that all about? The pitfalls and the crests?
The pitfalls, humidity. No, I mean, moving across the country was an adventure for sure. We did it obviously, as we spoke about, for family reasons. My family's here. My wife's family was from Hawaii, and they actually just recently relocated here and left Hawaii. So everybody's here now in Florida, wow. Which is great for the kids. It's great for the grandparents. But I'm not going to lie. We miss California. We miss the lifestyle. We miss the food. Just the way of life. We miss that immensely. Florida brings us closer to family. There's nothing more important in the world in my mind than family. So that kind of trumps everything. But at the end of the day, we'd love to get back to California at some point.
And in terms of the physical atmosphere, in terms of athletics, it's not like you ran into the middle of nowhere. I mean, you're rife with it. Tampa Bay, not far away. You've got the Buccaneers and the Rays and the Lightning and so on. You're in a very, I would say, healthy or active area. So I imagine that transition wasn't so bad.
No, it wasn't bad at all. And actually, most of the people that I work with are kind of all over. I had this joke that, when I was living in California, most of my clients are on the East Coast. I said, watch, we're going to move to California and move to Florida. And most of my clients are going to actually end up being pushed to the West Coast just because Murphy's Law type of thing. But it's been a good transition. There is a lot of proximity. There are a lot of sports teams down here. My wife actually works for the Minnesota Twins. So she's based out of their spring training complex down in Fort Myers, Florida. So makes that, we'll call it hellacious commute. By California standards, not all that bad. It's only an hour and a half.
Oh, not bad at all.
But it's not stuck in traffic. It's just an hour and a half. It's not like you can shave time off of it because it's just interstate, as they call it here. And we have to make the change. Instead of calling it freeways, we now have to call it interstates. People know what we're talking about.
That's it.
But yeah, so a lot of sports down here, a lot of spring training, a lot of baseball, as you mentioned, a lot of professional sports teams. The place is growing.
And so with your work, though, you've got clients all over the place, and you're, as I understand it, really a consultant, advisor, assessor. Is that how you kind of position yourself?
Yeah, I exactly how I position myself. So I always, just to make it easy, I tell people I solve human performance problems. So I will come into an organization or go into an organization, and whatever problem that they're experiencing, I will help diagnose and then give them some information on potentially why they're experiencing this problem and then how to course correct. And I do that a lot with sports teams. I do that with the military, provide guidance in anything related to human performance.
Yeah, so you're not actually talking necessarily about the individual athlete, although that may come into play. It's more about programming, maybe front office or back office, the coaching staff, the programs, how they initiate assessments or protocols. I mean, that's really what you go in for.
Yeah, it could be that. I do work with athletes one-on-one. I do have some that have retained me and just kind of used me as a, for lack of a better term, bullshit detector. Right? Hey, Brandon, I came across this supplement and the guys in the clubhouse were talking about it. What do you think? Hey, I heard about this recovery product that some of the guys in the locker room were talking about, and they're like really on to it. What are your thoughts? So I do have that, where I do provide guidance on, technology and supplementation and recovery protocols and things like that. But yeah, I advise organizations and sports teams on kind of what they're doing, how they're doing it as it relates to human performance and performance programs and the deployment thereof. I'll help vet programs. I'll help vet technology for teams. I will be brought in to do different audits. Say, hey, can you come and tell us what we do really well about nutrition and what we don't do well with nutrition? It's like, okay. So I go in, do that, spend 5 days. Then I write up a big report and tell them my thoughts. And then with the military, my life's a little bit different. I'm actually working on some projects to kind of reshape the way they view human performance, which I think is long overdue and 100% needed.
Tell me about that. What is the long overdue? Is it just that it's archaic information, not much change? It takes a while for that to occur. What's going on?
I think the big thing is just that the military is so used to throwing money at problems and trying to solve human performance problems with equipment. So if I have a D3 basketball player, I can't give him a really good pair of shoes and make him a D1 basketball player, right? I can take a warfighter, operator, soldier, whatever the term we want to use. I can give them a better gun. I can give them better boots. But if they are compromised as a human, sleep deprived, nutritionally compromised, poor training, that type of game improvement, war improvement type of stuff is only going to get them so far, right? So looking at trying to get them to spend more of their efforts on optimizing and enhancing the human capability is where I spend most of my time.
And we're not talking necessarily in the regards to basic training where you're trying to mold a soldier, but after basic training and actually conditioning on an ongoing basis. Is that more or less the point?
Potentially. So like right now, I'm doing a couple of things. One, I was part of a study for what's called Master E, and everything's acronyms in the military. So I can't even tell you what that means. I have to look it up. But it's a marksmanship study where we're going to look at putting these novice marksmen and expert marksmen through stress and see how they respond to that. I've also been kind of guiding the military in terms of what they should think about from future performance and future research and performance. Because they have a lot of great resources in the military, like so many. They have research labs and medical labs and amazing researchers and biomechanists and physiologists and you name it. They have every piece of the human body covered from a research standpoint. But just trying to take those things into action, I think, has been a little bit difficult. And I think the fact that command changes every 3 years makes things even more difficult, right?
Sure.
It's like a new head coach coming in every 3 years. It's hard to establish really a systematic approach of anything.
And what's the networking between all those departments you just listed? Is there a very strong network of communication, or do certain departments not even recognize that there's other departments existing?
I wouldn't say it's a lack of recognition. I just think it's just staying in their own lane and keeping their head down and doing their work, right? It's not anything done on purpose. I mean, there is some cross collaboration, and that's what this mastery project is about, is looking at some of the multiple system effort of the human, because we know that things are connected. It's not just about the physical world. The physical world is easy for us, right? Because it's quantifiable and you can see it. You can see these changes and manifestations in our physical appearance, and we can see us getting stronger and see us becoming more fit. But we forget about the social, the emotional, and the cognitive piece about it. And that all four are connected, and not one is more important than the other. So how we feel physically impacts how we feel socially, emotionally, and cognitively. How we feel emotionally can impact what we do socially, how we feel cognitively, and our physical well-being. So all of these things are connected, and trying to understand and trying to get the military to understand that this is what's happening. achieving sustainable high performance is about optimizing all four of those domains, not just the simple one physical aspect.
Sure. Well, I'm sure that kind of carries back over into professional sports teams too. You've got different elements, not just the player, of course. You've got various coaching positions. You've got the athletic trainer. You've got the physical therapist. You've got the dietitian, and then there's nutritional coaching and so on. So I imagine you're kind of doing the same thing if you're hired by a professional sports team to come in and audit them. Is that what you're looking at, is like the cohesiveness between all these departments?
Yeah, sometimes it is. Sometimes the team will say, can you come in and just do an audit on our whole performance back of house? And I'll do that. And sometimes that does come into play, the cohesiveness or lack thereof, many times, to kind of and give them some guidance on how to fix that and to course correct and change that. And it's funny that the nice thing about these experiences is that selfishly I get to learn. So I go into one team and they're like, they do A, B, and C really well, but 1, 2, and 3 poorly. And then I'll go to this other team and they'll be the exact opposite, where they do A, B, and C really poorly, but 1, 2, 3 really well. So it's fun to kind of be like a little bit of a detective and try and figure out why is it this team does this well and that poorly, but the other team is the opposite. So it's selfishly I get to learn a ton.
Well, it's interesting because our mutual friend, we were speaking before the show, Mike Potenza, the strength coach for the San Jose Sharks. We're talking about how a lot of the strength coaches in the NHL are now coming together. And at one point in time, they may have seen each other as competition, but now much more colleagues and sharing that information. Are you finding the same thing with the teams that you're going to consult with? Or is there a more openness between the specialists behind the scenes and other teams?
It depends on the sport.
Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely. Like there are some sports, and I'm not going to name them, that are very much what we say doesn't get out. We don't tell anybody what's happening. What we do here is our own secret sauce and blah, right? So and other teams are like you said, with Mike and the strength coaches in the NHL, they're very great. They're very open. It's all about sharing. And I think part of the reason is there's a few things at play with that. And I'm just, guessing what the answer is, but many times I think that, there's an ego piece, right? And we forget that it's about an athlete or it's about a soldier. And when we forget that and think about it more as ourselves. And either you're trying to, show your worth, or you're trying to, whatever it is, right? That just doesn't make sense. It's one of the few professions that I see that happen in. Everywhere else, any other profession, everybody's willing to help and chat and discuss and talk about things and exchange ideas. And what's your take on that? You think that?
Interesting. Yeah. I wonder if, well, you say it depends upon the sports, but I wonder also what you're dealing with Olympic teams in various nations, like the Chinese Olympic team. And so now we're seeing a competition between nations too. So I wouldn't doubt it. Also, you mentioned the military and training them. Is it only one branch in the military, or are you being asked to consult with more than one branch?
More than one. Some of these efforts are Department of Defense wide. So
Okay.
they kind of they'll touch everybody. Yeah.
And does that flow well between the different services, Army, Navy, Marines, and so on?
There's certainly some things that they don't agree upon. There are some, just to give you an example, I'm not going to name the specific technologies, but there are some performance technologies that are being deployed on the Marine standpoint. And they're not good technology, and other branches have expressed their views of that specific technology and how it's undesirable, not very accurate and whatnot, but yet they're still moving forward with it. So That's a
Well,
little
there
bit
is
problematic.
so much. There's like a boom of sports science technology that's out there these days. It seems like every week something else is coming up that you could throw on your wrist or put around your waist or just attach to your temples, and it's going to tell you that your parents were never married and your taxes are due in about a week or so, amongst other things, right? So how do you vet the technology? Because you do have a process for vetting the stuff that the teams and the athletes are using. What is it that you do? Obviously, your background is heavily into understanding human performance, but what about when it comes to tech?
When it comes to tech, there's a I just actually developed a process for vetting wearable technology for the DoD, and how I vet technology is it's pretty simple actually. It's just about asking the right questions, um, meeting with the data scientists, meeting with these companies, visiting these companies pre-COVID, obviously, sending the technology to outside labs, discussing with other people who have vetted this technology in the past, checking your results to see if these things are still happening. Um, Looking at the research that these companies provide, allowing us or me or anybody to look under the hood at the data. Um, so there's a whole host of things that has to happen, but the first one is a conversation. Tell me about your product, tell me about what you say it does, take me through a presentation, yada yada. Can I try the technology? Then I look at it, play around with it, experience it with myself. Then I would sometimes ask other labs to evaluate or send it to other labs to evaluate, or in the DoD, we have other labs that look at technology. Some sports federations have labs that look at technology, and then start to uncover things and look at things and look at the algorithms and look at the data it's collecting, comparing it to a gold standard, look at the research in which has come out over it and comb through that research to make sure it's decent research or good research, and then to determine what the error is and determine the error budget. And I think that's the biggest thing with technology. It's not that a technology is good or bad. It's about how much error are you willing to accept? It's just like measuring body composition. I can put you in a DEXA and have a very small margin of error. I can use calipers because it's affordable, but it doesn't mean it's bad. It just means I'm willing to accept a
Broader margin of error.
greater margin of error. Or I can have somebody guess, right? I think, Rocky, you're 5.3, right? Oh, okay. Right. And there's more error there, right? So it's a matter of determining the type of information and the quality of information that this wearable is giving you. And then each group can then determine how comfortable they are with that amount of error.
So I'm curious, without like naming products or whom this is, whom you're looking into, can you tell me some of the most fascinating tech that you've run across thus far, and that has a good standard deviation or margin of error that you would say, wow, this is something unique that hasn't happened in a while or I haven't seen?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of good products out there. I just think it's, there's some decent sleep tracking products out there. There are some decent heart rate monitor products out there, from a health, fitness, wellness standpoint. And there's a lot of bad ones too. I think the thing that people need to understand is that just because it's on the market, it doesn't mean it's valid and reliable and accurate. I think sometimes we think that because, certainly somebody wouldn't put something out there that's only 70% accurate. Well, they do. And many times much less accurate. Because what they're trying to do is put out a minimum viable product and hopes that somebody else will come along and purchase them for a big amount of money. And then the original people who started the company have the golden parachute. And then this other company can worry about developing it and making it better.
Gotcha. Now, I'm curious, when you do assessments with teams or teams primarily, do you make suggestions as to, hey, like I've got guys that I've come into contact with, they would actually work really great integrating into your system? Or do you just simply give recommendations, say, you're going to need yourself a new assistant strength coach, the nutritionist you have really needs to step it up, or you need to get rid of them? Or is this a kind of, are these some suggestions that you typically make, or how does it work?
I wouldn't quite, in terms of making, I would say people need to kind of, you may have an education problem, meaning you need more continuing education. Some of your methods are antiquated. I wouldn't go as far as recommending people are removed.
Gotcha.
But I do make, sometimes I'll recommend hiring a high performance director, and then that person could better make that decision. But I'll guide them on that and say, listen, if you do hire a high performance director, you have to support this person, and you need to be able to support them if they want to make some changes. Because if you don't support them, they're not going to have the success, and this job will fail. So, that's the key to anything, right? You listen to any award-winning speech at the Oscars, at the Tonys. You listen to anybody who's done anything successful, and the one thing they always say is, I couldn't have done it without the support of. And it's the same thing here. If you don't have front office support, the job's not going to go well at all.
So what led you down this road? I'm curious, like with your background, as you developed it, a lot of people in your position would maybe take a different avenue rather than assessor, organizational kind of aspect. What was it? What clicked for you?
It wasn't anything that clicked. People just asked me to do it.
Oh, really? So,
and I was like, they're like, could you do this for us? I'm like, okay. And I was like, this was a lot of fun. I'm going to do more of this. And that's really what it came down to. Like where I am today, I kind of just stumbled upon because people were asking me for it.
Where did that start? What was the first, can you tell me, what was the first organization that said, hey, we need your help?
The first organization that came out and I did an audit for was the Oakland Raiders. This is when I was living in California.
Yeah.
And I actually did one for Potenza and the Sharks. I did that for nutrition for them.
Nice.
Yeah. And then my first military piece came because the military, when I was in California, military came out when I was up at Stanford, and they came out and just want to see how we did things from a performance standpoint. And I'm very much an open book, so I gave them everything. And then they called and said, hey, we'd like you to do some consulting with us if you're open to it. Okay, there you go.
Fantastic.
So, yeah.
So you don't have a studio per se. You primarily work out of your office.
I do. Yep. And I used to travel a ton. I used to spend anywhere from 10 to 15 days a month on the road. And not all at once, but
Sure.
Yeah, I would spend a lot of time on the road and in airplanes. But now with COVID, it's, the working from home hasn't changed, but certainly going to places has.
Curious with the Raiders, now the Vegas Raiders, which I don't know about you, but I think that has a better ring to it, the Las Vegas Raiders in Oakland. Anyway, we won't go in there. But what was it that you found, if you could, or do you have a clause where you can't share that information?
Well, no, it's just a matter of going through and determining kind of this is the thing. I go in and figure out what organizations do really well.
Yeah.
What they don't do really well. And then I determine ways of how do we course correct the things that we don't do well. And then how do we make sure we keep doing the things that we are doing well, right? And every group is a little bit different. I don't even remember the report that I wrote for them. It was a long time ago, right? But it's a pretty hefty report. Same thing with Mike. But, a lot of it is, here are some supplementation strategies. So I'll vet their supplements. If it was like with the Sharks, right? Here's your supplements. Here's the ones that I would keep. Here's the ones that I wouldn't. The dispensers, right? You guys are dispensing stuff and guys are putting their hands in. There's a hygiene problem with that. So here I recommend these types of dispensers that will, here are 4 different dispensers for you guys to choose from. Make their life easier. I met with their chef, right? Here's the feedback that I got from talking with the athletes and the chef. And here's some quick changes that would be simple, right? You have some pro-inflammatory oils that you're using or pro-inflammatory ingredients in some of these foods. I would recommend switching to these types of foods and these types of this brand, for instance. The location of your supplements is not in a good spot. You need to maybe have some more performance-based snacks and put them here, here, and here in the facility at these points where these guys are moving, these high traffic points. Things like that. It could be anything along those lines. You might need to hire another dietitian. They don't have enough time with the guys. The food on the plane is not very good. Here's what we need to do to fix that. Here's 3 options for you to fix that. Things like that. It's just really everything you can think about from a nutrition standpoint, you just kind of look at.
And then I know we touched about like headhunters and so on, but do you have a recruitment tool that you'll use for, say, nutritionists? Like you need to have another nutritionist come in to add more support. Do you have a network of professionals out there that you could reach out to, just kind of like the dispenser selection? Here's your nutrition selection.
I do have a little bit of a depth chart, but like with the Raiders, one of the things I helped them do was hire a nutrition intern. So I actually headed up the process. They asked me to do another project, and that was to head that up. So what I did was I handled all of the selection down to the top 3 candidates or top 4 candidates. And then I handed it over to them for them to make the final decision.
All Stanford grad students, I imagine?
Yeah, none actually. They didn't have a nutrition program there. So no, yeah, right.
Well, that's going to be my next question is like, what do you think of Stanford's nutrition program? But we can go right past that one.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So you mentioned also looking at kind of their sleep patterns. Do you? I'm sure you don't conduct sleep studies themselves, but what do you think about sleep patterns and like looking at them as a whole? Obviously, it's where we gain our recovery. It's where we gain our strength and repair and so on. But how does that work into your assessing of athletes? Do you just ask them how many hours a night do they get to sleep?
No, it's very important. And there's actually some technology that I recommend. I monitor my sleep every night. I have 3 different devices every night that I just compare. So I use the Oura Ring. I use the Ready Band by Fatigue Science. Then I'm using just recently, I have like the Polar thing. The Ready Band is, from a research standpoint, is the most accurate one on the market. And that's by Fatigue Science. It doesn't give you anything else. It doesn't give you heart rate. It doesn't give you body temperature, steps taken in a day. It's just sleep quantity and sleep quality. It's about 92% accurate to polysomnography, which is what you would see in a lab. And it was developed by the Department of Defense. The technology was developed by the DoD and was spent like $25 million over 15 years to develop it. So it's not like, somebody just came out with this yesterday and building the plane while they're flying it. So I prefer using that rather than asking people how well they slept, because we're not very good at that. Right. We're not good at telling people how long we slept, and we're not very good at telling people the quality of sleep that we got. We know we didn't sleep well, but we're not as accurate as we like to think we humans are.
I imagine. Plus, we're really not cognizant of it to begin with when we're in the middle of it. So that would be an accurate way of doing it. I'm curious. Also, when you mentioned the Raiders, you've worked with the Atlanta Braves. Yep. Are you working currently with any sports teams right now?
Right now, I am supporting some sports teams through another entity.
Okay.
So another consulting group has pulled me in to help them support some sports teams. And I'm also doing stuff, like I said, the military has a lot of my time. And I'm also doing some stuff with Headspace, the meditation app. I'm doing some work with them.
How is COVID affecting not only your ability to consult, but I'm just thinking of the sports teams themselves. We've got consolidated seasons. We've got off-season competition going on. Mm-hmm. I mean, right now, the World Series, when we're recording this, just finished the day before, but we're looking at the NFL is probably the only regularly scheduled professional sports team currently going. But the NBA, of course, they're shifted all around. How do you see this affecting sports performance? It's got to some degree, but what are the major things that you're seeing that COVID has interrupted aside from just the scheduling of games and competition?
Well, I think it's impacted resilience and injury mitigation 100%. I mean, if you're not able to train the way you're used to training, that can be problematic, right? That's why we train. One of the reasons we train is to decrease our potential for developing an injury. It doesn't mean you're not going to get it, but it certainly stacks the odds in our favor of not doing so. And when our training is compromised, when our training is truncated, and then when we have to ramp things up, then we're putting ourselves at a greater risk. And I think we're seeing some of that already. So I think there are some major disruptions. There's some stress, around this whole thing as well. Sports teams obviously everybody's affected, right? It's not just sports teams, but the military, right? Like even traveling to certain installations we can't do. And even depending on where you are. And, at one point earlier in the year, this was all over the news, right? They stopped troop movement, right? Because they weren't sure what was happening with COVID. So, it's affecting everything. So it's affecting how we all do business in one way, shape, or form. I think sports has kind of unfairly been anointed as, trying to bring some sense of normalcy back, which I think is what the big push in bringing like college football back and these other things is like, people just want to feel somewhat normal. And I don't know if that's fair to ask of sport to do that, but nonetheless, that's been the role I think they've been asked to play, whether it's fair or unfair.
Gotcha. So around our dinner table at night, we share what has transpired during the day, and there are these 5 components, and I don't think I've ever asked a guest on the show about them, but there's good, bad, what the heck, funny, and bud. Those are the categories. So when it comes to your occupation, your career, your path, and so on, what's the good part about this?
The good part about my profession, or the good part about this whole COVID thing?
No, sorry. Putting COVID aside, just you as a person and your role as a professional and what you do with the DoD and sports teams, athletes, and so on. What's the best part about it? What's the good part?
Well, the best part is just getting to meet all these different people and interacting with these individuals and, being an intellect, and this is personal, right? Intellectually stimulated conversations, right? I like that. I like to be challenged intellectually, and I hope that I can reciprocate that on the other end. And that's the fun part for me. Nice.
Okay. And then on the opposite side of that, what's the downfall? What's the bad part about it?
The bad part is that, you're never affiliated with one group, right? You're not in it. You go and you leave, and you go and you leave, and you go and leave, and they may take your advice, they might not, but you're never really part of the team, which is fine for me. But that's kind of
you're somewhat disconnected at the same time.
Yeah, there is a disconnection.
Outside observer to some degree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Then there's the what the heck. Like, what's the thing that you just scratch your head and you had no idea this was going to be part of the big picture for you? Like, is there something that just smacks you upside the head and goes, wow, I didn't see that coming, or that's kind of cool, whatever it is?
The what the heck? I'm going to go with that. Actually, this is that's going to go for the funny one. I'm going to save that one. I don't have a what the heck one. Maybe we can circle back.
Yeah, we could. Okay, tell me the funny. What's the funny part?
The funny one is the military is enamored by the sports world. The sports world is enamored by the military, and each group thinks the other one is farther ahead than them.
Wow, really?
It's funny. Yeah, like I'll go into a room at sports. They're like, you do work with the military. What are they doing? They must be so far ahead. And then I go into a meeting with the military. They're like, what is the sports world doing? They must be so far ahead. It's like, oh my gosh, it's comedy. That's right, what I think is funny.
You got to get them in the same room, obviously. So looking off into the future, and don't go the easy route when COVID is over answer. Give us something else. Like, what is it? Is it the technology? Is it your own career path? What is it that that makes you wake up in the morning you're looking forward to?
This is what I look forward to. It's a little strange. I like the fact that I work from home 90% of the time, and my wife goes to work 90% of the time. And the reason I like that is because I can't stand gender stereotypes. And when I can wake my girls up in the morning and get them ready and make them breakfast, and they say, "Where's mommy?" and I say, "She's at work," I like that. The fact that this has given me an opportunity to hopefully set the stage for them, that they see the world just a little bit different from the way the generation before has, right? And I'm not saying they did it poorly or that generation before that did it poorly. I'm just saying that times are a changing. And, I think, putting our future in the hands of the youth, I think is important, and allowing them to see the world a little bit differently, I think is great. So that's kind of what I enjoy.
I love it. I can completely appreciate that. I'm the cook in the family. I do all of the grocery shopping.
Yeah.
I do all the meal planning. I
Yeah.
come home and do that. And I love it. And we share the role of being home at times between my wife and I. But when it comes time to hemming a dress or stitching up something, it always comes to Dad. Dad, can you help me sew this up?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. I went to funny story. I went to took my daughters to the dentist, and the woman who was checking us in, very nice woman, by the way, she said, "Okay, so it seems like okay, I have everything. Looks like mom filled out all the paperwork already." And I'm like, "Or I did." And she said, "I'm sorry." She goes, "I'm just used to the other way around." I'm like, "That's okay. That was sexist, but that's fine." And she just laughed. And I laughed too. And she said, "Fair enough. Okay. It was funny, right? Because it
is
one of those things. And it's not bad. It's just, it is what it is. So I think it's a good thing.
I do too. I think that the more we can kind of shake the roots of our own tree and see what kind of dead leaves fall off and see what remains, it's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, 100%.
Very nice. All right, we'll come back to the what the heck moments, because I know something's going to pop up in your head.
I know.
But yeah, and not to say that your success is unexpected in any means whatsoever, but it seems like you continually have the success outside of formal institution. So I guess that would be my next question. You were at Stanford. How many years were you at Stanford?
7.
7 years. And so you were in the world of academia, which for me personally speaking is it's an interesting dichotomy to being out, I would say, like, in quote, in the trenches, like in a training studio, compared to in a research facility and in a place such as Stanford. There is quite a difference. What was it like transitioning out of a university campus or college campus and into the other aspect, or into the private sector, I guess you'd say?
Well, I mean, I'd been in the private sector before. So, I used to work at IMG Academies. I was at Athletes Performance, or Exos, for a number of years. Then I left to go back to school and get my PhD. And then, I was working with one of our Olympic teams while doing that. So I've been in all these different sectors before, so it wasn't a problem. At least I didn't perceive it as a problem. So maybe that's why, like, kind of placebo effect, kind of like, oh, whatever. Right. Because at the end of the day, all we're talking about is human performance. It doesn't matter if they are a soldier. It doesn't matter if they're a special operator. It doesn't matter if they are a stay-at-home dad or a teacher or a custodian or a bank teller or a barista, right? Human is human is human. And if we can look at those traits which can make them better humans, then they are going to be more likely to be able to succeed at their chosen career path, right? So at the end of the day, while the location might change and the job might change, at the end of the day, the common thread that runs between us all and what we have to do doesn't.
I like it. Now, let's take an individual who is in the similar path. They've gone to college. They've gotten their degree in exercise science or human performance, and they like the idea of not necessarily becoming a sport coach or an athletic trainer, a physical therapist or strength coach, but they like the idea of what you're doing, where you're the analytical mind going in and hunting down the clues for problem solving to get an operation running much more streamlined, much more effective, and to get their athletes at their highest level of peak performance. Two questions. What books would you recommend to such an individual? And what path would you want them to, and what would you encourage them to begin walking down?
Boy, geez, those are two difficult questions.
I'm not going to throw easy ones at you all the entire hour here. I mean,
I hear you. I don't know the path. And the reason I don't know the path, probably because there's a lot of ways of getting there. When I first changed my major to exercise science when I was an undergrad, I did so without even knowing what you could do with that degree. I just was getting good grades in the classes and I enjoyed the classes. And as a result, this is what my major is going to be. And I went and met with the new advisor and I said, I have a question for you. He goes, sure, what's the question? He goes, you're doing well in the classes. I'm like, thank you. I said, what do you do with this degree? And he laughed and he said, well, you can either go into cardiac rehab or you can go into corporate fitness. And I'm like, okay, thanks. Neither of those options appealed to me whatsoever. So in my mind, I'm like, there has to be a door number 3. I don't know what it is. I don't know how I'm going to find it, but I'm going to figure it out one way, shape, or form. And I did. I just stumbled. When I did my internship, I found a place that worked with athletes and I did it there. Right. And then that led me down to that third door. So, and then I just started going, just tried to do my job really well. And then it led to another one and it led to another one and another one and another one. So, I don't know the path. I don't know if there is a path.
No, that's great.
But as far as books, read outside of your profession. That's the one piece of advice I can give you. Many of the things that I very rarely do I read in my profession. I do out of necessity, but most of my other stuff comes from way outside. And the reason I think that's important is because it allows you to look at things a little bit differently. It allows you to see things differently. It allows you to look at things through a lens which others don't. It's like, I'll use baseball as an example because the World Series was just yesterday, right? Baseball is very inbred, meaning that, if you played it, then you coached it. And if you coached it, then you're in it. And if you're a strength coach, you probably played it. And if you were a sports, everybody was in baseball. And I'll go into these organizations and I'm like, the biggest problem you have is that everybody's reading the same books and doing the same thing. What does that mean? Right? You guys are just all if I have a question on baseball, I'll ask somebody. I don't need to know it. Right? So it's nice. It's great to, I don't mean to pick on baseball. A lot of organizations are like that, but learning from outside of your profession allows you to see things so differently. And most of the time, other professions have thought about these things before and probably answered the question. So why are we trying to, recreate the wheel?
Interesting. All right. So does that include for books outside of your profession that analytical thinking, or is that inside your profession?
It's both.
Okay. All right. So you can dabble into that. You sound like a Malcolm Gladwell fan is what you're sounding like, whether it's Blank or a Freakonomics fan, everything that allows you to kind of look in a different perspective and not take whatever it is you see for granted, but actually put on a new pair of lenses by looking at it from a different viewpoint.
Yep,
yeah.
Exactly.
Cool.
Exactly.
So is that what yeah. And it's interesting you say that because so many colleagues will be deep into reading so much research and information for strength and conditioning or the latest and greatest books that are coming out. But there's so many like studio owners who could really do well with a class in psychology or business management. Yep. Right. And we got to think outside of that.
100%.
All right. So what book are you reading right now, Brandon?
I am actually reading about lawn care.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you have trouble sleeping?
No, I have to take care of my lawn. So I'm trying to figure out how to do it better.
Nice.
That's what I'm reading.
Yeah. Are there gophers in Florida, or do you just have to be concerned with the alligators?
No, it's just seriously, like, I'm just trying to figure out how to control weeds without pesticides, right? Because I have kids running around in the yard. So it's like, what do you do? How do you handle this? So
yeah, peppermint and orange oil. That's what I've been told.
Okay.
But there you go.
So
well, this has been great.
Yeah, not too exciting. I wish I had a better book for you.
No. Hey, you're in Florida. You're kicking back outside, watching the grass grow. You're actually doing your research as we speak. It's fantastic. You're dual tasking. But we're up against the clock, and I really appreciate the time you put aside in your day to share some insight with me and the listening audience. If people have themselves a sports team, or there's some military individuals wanting to know more about your work with the DoD, how can we find more information? What's a good resource to find out more?
You can reach out to me on Twitter, probably the best way. Marcello13 is my Twitter handle. So you can reach out to me there.
Cool. Now we'll do that. I'll put the description at the bottom.
LinkedIn. I have LinkedIn too. That works.
And LinkedIn as well. Well, this is great. And I imagine that our paths will cross hopefully next year at one of the Perform Better Summits. At least that's my hope. Now that you're on the East Coast, though, you're probably being in Orlando most likely. But if you come back out to Southern Cal and Long Beach and so on, we'll definitely set some time aside so that we can kind of change how the presenters integrate and network with one another.
I'd love it. I'd enjoy that. Thanks, Rocky.
Thank you very much. Well, that's it for the Zelos Podcast this week. If you missed last week, be sure to click back into the link there because we had Mike Potenza, the strength coach for the San Jose Sharks, join us. And it was a heck of an episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. In fact, next week, we've got another big hitter coming on, Tom House, who is the throwing coach for Tom Brady and Drew Brees. And we're going to talk about his new venture, Mustard. Thanks for listening.